Richard Sterling adjusted his Italian silk tie as he slid into the back seat of the black sedan, already pulling out his phone to review quarterly projections. The leather seats carried the scent of expensive cologne and success. His fingers moved rapidly across the screen, calculating numbers that would determine the futures of thousands of employees. Before we dive into this story, drop a comment and let us know what state you're watching from. Maybe you've seen talented people overlooked in similar ways where you're from. The driver turned slightly, revealing kind eyes and graying temples. Marcus Chun had been driving for Sterling Industries for 3 months, always punctual, always professional, always invisible to the executives he transported through the city's maze of traffic and ambition. A small voice from the front passenger seat made Richard look up from his phone. Emma Chun, 8 years old with her father's gentle eyes and her mother's determined chin, sat buckled in beside Marcus. Her school backpack rested at her feet, homework papers visible through the open zipper. "Daddy," she said quietly, turning to Marcus, "you forgot to ask about his meeting today." Marcus smiled softly at his daughter, expression that transformed his weathered face into something tender and proud. Richard barely glanced at the child, his attention already returning to the glowing screen in his palm. The morning traffic stretched ahead like a river of brake lights and impatience. He had built his fortune on precision, on controlling every variable, and unexpected passengers disrupted his carefully orchestrated routine. Marcus guided the sedan through the congested streets with practiced ease, his hands steady on the wheel. 3 jobs kept him moving from dawn until midnight. The driving position with Sterling Industries paid well enough to cover Emma's school fees, but barely touched the mountain of bills that accumulated like autumn leaves. Emma opened her backpack and withdrew a book that made Richard's eyebrows raise slightly. Advanced Literature for Young Minds. The child's fingers traced the words as she read silently, her lips moving with complex syllables that seemed far beyond her years. The radio crackled with morning news, but Marcus reached over to lower the volume when Richard's phone began ringing. The gesture was small, considerate, the kind of attention to detail that separated good drivers from great ones. "Mr. Sterling," Emma said suddenly, her voice carrying an unusual formality, "could you please speak more quietly? My daddy is trying to concentrate on keeping us safe." Richard's jaw tightened at being corrected by a child, his fingers gripping the phone with unnecessary force. Marcus reached into the crib with gentle hands, lifting the small bundle against his chest. The baby's cries immediately softened as he began a subtle swaying motion, his voice dropping to a low, soothing murmur. "Shoo, little one, you're safe now," he whispered, his fingers naturally finding the perfect position to support her tiny head. The infant's breathing gradually slowed as Marcus continued his gentle movements, years of buried instincts flooding back like muscle memory. He adjusted her position slightly, recognizing the signs of an uncomfortable sleep posture, and watched as her eyelids began to flutter with approaching calm. The sound of hurried heels on marble announced Victoria Sterling's return before she appeared in the doorway. The CEO froze at the threshold, her briefcase sliding from her shoulder as she took in the sight of a uniformed security guard holding her 6-month-old daughter. "What are you doing?" she demanded, her voice sharp with protective alarm, even as she noticed Emma's peaceful state. Marcus turned slowly, his movements deliberate and non-threatening, the baby still nestled securely in his arms. "She was crying," he said simply, his dark eyes meeting Victoria's without apology or explanation. "I heard her from the hallway. She needed comfort." Victoria stepped forward, her maternal instincts warring with suspicion as she extended her arms. "Give her to me," she said, though something in the man's gentle demeanor gave her pause. Marcus transferred the now sleeping infant with practiced ease, his hands ensuring Emma remained undisturbed during the transition. "How did you know exactly what to do?" Victoria asked, studying his face as Emma settled contentedly against her shoulder. Richard's face flushed red as he scrolled through his contacts, each call ending in disappointment. Professional translation services were booked solid, and the few available interpreters quoted prices that would have funded small countries. "This is a disaster," he muttered, running his fingers through his perfectly styled hair. "The Nakamura deal represents $60 million in revenue. Without proper translation, We'll look like amateurs trying to conduct international business. Marcus navigated through the morning traffic while Richard continued his increasingly desperate phone calls. The CEO's voice grew sharper with each rejection, his usual composure cracking under pressure. "What about that university program you mentioned last week?" Victoria suggested, trying to remain calm despite the mounting crisis. Richard attempted to pronounce the name of the Japanese university partnership, his American tongue stumbling over the unfamiliar syllables. The mispronunciation was so severe that it transformed a respectful greeting into an accidentally crude expression. Emma turned slightly in her seat, her young face showing gentle concern. "Excuse me, Mr. Sterling," she said politely, "but I think you mean Wazita Daigaku, not what you just said." Her pronunciation was flawless, each syllable crisp and authentic. Richard stopped mid-sentence, staring at the child with a mixture of surprise and dismissal. "That's nice, sweetheart, but the adults are trying to solve a very important problem right now." The sedan crawled to a complete stop as construction barriers funneled 3 lanes of traffic into a single narrow passage. Orange cones stretched ahead like a parade of obstacles, and a digital clock on the dashboard seemed to mock their dwindling time. Richard's knuckles whitened as he gripped his phone, watching precious minutes evaporate. The Nakamura executives expected punctuality as a sign of respect, and tardiness could destroy negotiations before they even began. Marcus studied the gridlock ahead, then glanced at his GPS display showing alternative routes. "Mr. Sterling," he said quietly, "I know a back way for the warehouse district. It adds 5 miles but saves 20 minutes in this traffic." Victoria looked up from her own phone calls, impressed by the driver's knowledge of the city's hidden arteries. Richard waved dismissively without looking up from his screen, too focused on his crisis to acknowledge the suggestion. Emma had been listening to her father's quiet conversation in what sounded like multiple languages. She switched effortlessly between English responses to Marcus and what Victoria increasingly recognized as fluent Japanese phrases. The child's accent was remarkable, carrying the proper regional inflections that took years to master. "Mr. Sterling," Victoria said carefully, "perhaps we should listen to your driver's route suggestion. He seems to know these streets quite well." Richard finally looked up, his stress-clouded judgment beginning to clear as he noticed Victoria's serious expression. Marcus guided the sedan through a maze of industrial streets that Richard had never seen despite working in the city for 15 years. The alternate route wound past warehouses and loading docks, a hidden world that existed parallel to the gleaming corporate towers. Richard's phone erupted with a harsh tone reserved for emergencies. The voice on the other end spoke rapidly, panic evident even through the speaker. The backup translator from the university had been in a car accident, leaving them completely without linguistic support for the most important meeting of the fiscal year. "This cannot be happening," Richard said, his voice cracking under the weight of impending failure. $60 million depends on this negotiation, and we're about to walk in there speaking different languages literally and figuratively. Emma turned to whisper something to her father in what Victoria now clearly recognized as perfect Japanese. The child's tone carried the formal respect appropriate for business discussions, her small voice navigating complex honorific structures that challenged even advanced students. Marcus responded quietly in the same language, his pronunciation equally flawless. Victoria leaned forward slightly, her business instincts sharpening as she observed the effortless conversation between father and daughter. The realization struck her like lightning. These were not simple phrases learned from tourist books or language apps. This was the kind of fluency that required years of dedicated study and practice. Victoria's eyes remained fixed on Emma as the child effortlessly switched between languages while helping organize papers from her backpack. The transitions were seamless, natural, like a musician moving between different instruments in the same symphony. "Excuse me, Emma," Victoria said gently, leaning forward with genuine curiosity. "How many languages do you speak with your father?" Emma's face brightened with innocent pride. "Daddy taught me Japanese, Mandarin, Korean, German, and Spanish so far. We practice every night after homework." He says languages are like keys that open doors to understanding different people. Richard's head snapped up from his phone, his expression skeptical. That's very impressive, sweetheart, but we're talking about professional business translation here. These are complex negotiations requiring years of specialized training. Marcus caught Victoria's eyes in the rearview mirror, a flash of something deeper passing between them. The quiet dignity in his expression suggested layers of experience that his current position didn't reveal. Victoria noticed textbooks scattered in Emma's backpack, their titles revealing advanced linguistic studies far beyond elementary school level. Phonetic analysis, cultural communication patterns, business protocol in East Asian markets. These were graduate-level materials, not children's language games. The pieces of a larger puzzle began forming in Victoria's mind as she observed the careful way Marcus chose his words, the scholarly precision in Emma's vocabulary, the obvious depth of their shared knowledge. The sedan pulled into the parking garage beneath the International Trade Center, its concrete walls echoing with the sound of expensive engines and corporate ambition. Richard's phone buzzed continuously with messages from his team, each one confirming the same devastating reality. No translator could be found. Marcus stepped out to open the doors, his movements carrying the same quiet professionalism that had characterized every interaction. As Victoria gathered her briefcase, she watched him help Emma with her homework, and her breath caught in her throat. The assignment spread across Emma's lap was not elementary school work. Complex literary analysis covered the pages, with margin notes written in what appeared to be multiple languages. The depth of annotation suggested a teaching style that belonged in university lecture halls, not family cars. Richard paced beside the sedan, his expensive shoes clicking against the concrete as he made increasingly desperate calls to translation services across the city. His voice carried the edge of a man, watching his empire crumble over something as simple as language barriers. Victoria approached Marcus with careful deliberation, her business instincts overriding social conventions. The question that had been building in her mind demanded an answer, regardless of the potential awkwardness. "Marcus," she said quietly, "may I ask about your background? Your daughter's education seems remarkably advanced for someone her age. The way you both handle languages suggests formal training that goes well beyond casual study." Marcus looked at Victoria for a long moment, his weathered hands still holding Emma's homework. The garage's fluorescent lights cast shadows that seemed to age him beyond his years, revealing the weight of dreams deferred and pride swallowed. "I was a professor of comparative linguistics at Columbia University for 12 years, he said quietly. "I specialized in East Asian business communication and cultural protocols. Published research on cross-cultural negotiation strategies that companies still use today." Victoria's eyes widened as the pieces clicked into place. The advanced materials, Emma's sophisticated language skills, Marcus's obvious intelligence that seemed incongruous with his current position. "Budget cuts eliminated my department 2 years ago," Marcus continued, his voice steady despite the pain of memory. "Emma's mother had passed the year before, and I needed steady income immediately. Driving pays the bills while I search for academic positions. But the market is saturated with displaced professors." Richard overheard fragments of the conversation and turned with skeptical irritation. "That's a touching story, but we need professional help, not career change fantasies. The Nakamura executives arrive in 30 minutes. Victoria stepped between them, her business acumen recognizing an opportunity that Richard's stress had blinded him to. "Marcus," she said carefully, "would you be willing to help us with this translation? The future of this deal might depend on someone who truly understands both languages and business culture." Richard's face cycled through disbelief, desperation, and finally reluctant consideration. The weight of $60 million pressed against his prejudices, forcing him to confront an impossible choice between pride and profit. "You're asking me to trust the most important negotiation of my career to my driver," he said, his voice tight with frustration. "What if he makes a mistake? What if his academic credentials don't translate to real-world business situations?" Victoria placed her hand on Richard's arm with firm authority. "Marcus isn't just your driver. He's a published expert in exactly the field we need. His research on cross-cultural business communication is probably more relevant than any translator we could hire. Marcus straightened Emma's homework and closed her backpack with gentle precision. Mr. Sterling, I understand your hesitation. My current position doesn't inspire confidence in my academic abilities, but I've spent years studying the specific protocols that govern Japanese business relationships. The elevator doors opened with a soft chime, revealing the gleaming lobby of the International Trade Center. Through the glass walls, they could see black sedans arriving, carrying the Nakamura executives whose decisions would reshape Sterling Industries' future. Richard looked at Marcus with new eyes, seeing past the uniform to the man underneath. The risk was enormous, but the alternative was certain failure. Time had run out for conventional solutions, leaving only faith in hidden possibilities. The conference room fell silent as Marcus entered behind Richard and Victoria, his driver's uniform replaced by a borrowed jacket that transformed his entire presence. The Nakamura executives, three distinguished men in impeccable suits, observed the unexpected addition to their meeting with polite curiosity. Marcus bowed with precise depth and duration, his greeting flowing in flawless Japanese that carried the proper honorifics for each executive's rank within their corporate hierarchy. The subtle recognition of their individual status immediately caught their attention, a level of cultural awareness that impressed even seasoned negotiators. Richard watched in amazement as Marcus seamlessly navigated complex business terminology, translating not just words, but cultural concepts that required deep understanding of both societies. When technical specifications needed explanation, Marcus provided context that bridged American directness with Japanese preference for indirect communication. The lead executive, Mr. Nakamura himself, paused mid-sentence to address Marcus directly in rapid Japanese, testing his comprehension with industry-specific jargon. Marcus responded with equal fluency, even incorporating a subtle reference to a recent development in Tokyo's financial district that demonstrated current knowledge beyond textbook learning. Victoria noticed how Marcus anticipated cultural misunderstandings before they occurred, smoothing potential friction points with explanations that honored both perspectives. His translations enhanced rather than merely conveyed meaning, turning potential obstacles into bridges of mutual respect and understanding. The handshakes that concluded the meeting carried the weight of success beyond Richard's wildest expectations. The Nakamura Group had not only agreed to the original partnership, but expanded it to include markets in Korea and Taiwan, recognizing Sterling Industries as a company that truly understood international collaboration. Mr. Nakamura approached Marcus personally, speaking in Japanese with genuine admiration. Your cultural sensitivity and linguistic precision remind us of the professors who taught us during our years at American universities. You honor both our languages with your expertise. Richard stood speechless as the implications settled into his consciousness. The man he had dismissed as merely a driver had just secured the largest international deal in company history, transforming Sterling Industries from a regional player into a global contender. Marcus, Richard said, his voice thick with emotion and embarrassment, I owe you an apology and much more. Would you consider joining Sterling Industries as our Director of International Relations? The position comes with a salary that reflects your true worth and the respect you've earned today. Victoria smiled as she watched Marcus accept the offer, knowing that talent and dignity had finally found their proper recognition. Emma would grow up seeing her father valued for his gifts rather than hidden behind uniforms and prejudice. If this story moved you, please drop a comment and let us know your favorite part, or if you've ever witnessed hidden talents being revealed in someone you know.